Hey everybody, this is Perch. Lots of debate, discussion. What's going on in Discovery? Do we have Zaslav, about to cull clean house? It is funny, by the way, the cancellation of the Batgirl movie. It's prompted a bunch of videos of people like, oh, like, is this the end of the woke era? And they like have a huh kind of emoji, and then like they use that picture of the woman who screamed when Trump was elected, but which I had to be an actor or making a TikTok or something. Anyway, they use like, and then there's like liberal tears, and then like I don't know, you maybe have some like Chad illustration drinking a big cup of liberal tears. These are the same people, by the way, who always point out how stupid the toxic male fandom cups with people drinking the tears out of that is stupid. It's all stupid. You don't drink tears, people. It's gross. It's absolutely gross. First off, you're not going to be able to cry. I mean, unless you're just listening to Depeche Mode and Alex Jones all day, you're not going to be crying that much. Or maybe you're watching some of Wes's channel. No, I'm just kidding. See, this is how the beef rumors get started. Anyway, but you're not going to produce enough tears to put it into a cup. And then even if you did, it would be like warm and it would be gross. That's not as sanitary as you think. It's rolling down your face, and so you're going to then have to go solicit tears from somebody else. So you're going to have to go find a bunch of moist people, and you're going to have to get these tears. You're going to get some sweat in with those tears. You don't want to drink that, even if it's your enemy. You say Heather Antos posts these pictures of like drinking male hater tears. It's like, do you realize what you're putting in your body? I mean, maybe you don't care, but I wouldn't drink that. Disgusting. Anyway, so lots of people are wondering what's going on, but everybody's like, oh, now it's the dawn of a new era. You remember that when C.B. Cebulski came into Marvel and Axel Alonso was out, and everybody's like, it's a dawn of a new Marvel, and a couple of the comics like Tabaki's She-Hulk and I don't know, a couple other things got canned because their sales sucked, and it's like, he's righting the ship. How long did that last? I like how people use the excuse of like, well, he was going to be the hero and fix everything, but then that whole scandal came out of him using the Asian pen name, and so they got to him. They then got leverage on him that they could, they made him subservient to their will. And it's like, I'm sorry, were you paying attention to Cebulski for the decade prior to this promotion? His stuff sucked. This is the guy who's going to, clean house at Marvel and make everything amazing. I almost threw up my mouth just saying that. No, it's of course not. So, but give me a break. But anyway, I do like. It's funny when people make these bold claims. They always got to find some way to weasel out of it. It's always like, well, it's because the SJWs put a collar on him. It's like, no, it's because he sucked. He sucked before. He sucks now. That's all there is to it. Discovery is not going to suddenly change, DC into alpha male Chadtown. It's not going to happen. Okay, the guy's a money guy. He's going to go where the money is, which means some things that have no hope of making money are going to get canceled or have been canceled. Some things that have money are going to be regurgitated. You'll like some of those things. You'll hate other things. They're not going to like. Somebody sent me this clip. It's like, the guy's like all horny with glee. He's like, any second now, he's going to walk into DC's office and just fire everyone. Teeny Howard's going to walk out of there crying. And I'm like, okay, I don't think Teeny Howard's going into the office. And what's wrong with you? Anyway, we can all have fun fantasies. I mean, everybody's got some. I have many fantasies involving like removing all Arby's from the planet. That's it's some kind of magical like Thanos snap kind of you hit that and then all the Arby's are gone. They're replaced by places that sell actual food. But it doesn't happen anyway. So let's get to one of these mails. This is not one of those crazy mails, but he goes, "Hey Perch, love your channel. Do you think that with Discovery canceling The Flash TV show, Batgirl, Gotham Knights, and possibly more to come, they might axe DC's publishing arm?" This is the question that's been asked pretty continuously for the last 3 or 4 years. Also, for years, people have speculated that DC might sell the comic book licensing of their characters to another publisher. A couple of years ago, there was a rumor that Todd McFarlane and Robert Kirkman had shown interest in buying them. My understanding of that situation is that a number of people were approached, including McFarlane, including Kirkman, including a couple others who had money. But the money that was being asked was excessive. both for what these gentlemen had and also, what you would want to spend on an investment like that. So my understanding is the company was shopped to some of these people, but it was never a serious shopping. And many have speculated that, the people who were kind of arranging that didn't really want to sell anyway, but there was asked to do some diligence during the AT&T acquisition, everything else that like, hey, let's see if there's a buyer out there. Let's see what the interest is. Investment bankers typically do this when they have a company. They're trying to figure out kind of the bellwether of what they might be able to offload it for. And so they go out and they shop it, and they generally put up a pretty obscene price that is much higher than what they expect to make. And then they see if there's any interest. Like, are they going to get within 25%? This is very common in when startups are being sold, or when there's when venture capitalist VCs are off kind of managing their portfolios, or when an investment banker is hauled in. It's one of the first things they do. That's what was going on here with DC. There was not in my strong belief. Now, talking to several of the people, I think some of the people who were approached to buy it thought it was serious, but it was not a serious effort. That's my strong confirmed belief. Okay, but anyway, back to the mail. Well, actually, before that, I mean, understand that in business and finance, there's always this desire, especially with these kinds of topics and social media and all this type of stuff. There's always this deep desire to want to believe the more conspiracy type elements of what's going on. And I get it. That's more fun than saying, hey, the math didn't work out, or, this was done for tax reasons. But the business world does not operate on YouTube drama or conspiracies. It operates on pretty basic facts. So you can do a lot. You can make up a lot of stories. You can do a lot of crazy things. But eventually, when it comes to actual money, investments, and buying power, you get to the very boring result of, well, facts actually matter, and people are going to be looking at things that are, that are pretty dry. They do not make for good YouTube videos, but they do make for good investments. It's kind of like, I mentioned, I'm watching this Alex Jones trial, and there's some comedy there because Jones seems completely mystified by the fact that crazy shit that he says, is fine for an audience. But in a court of law, tends to, you can't just make shit up and then it'd be like, well, that's my opinion, Your Honor. It's like, no, that's not how law works. Neither is that how business works. Anyway, back to the mail. It says, so if Discovery would axe DC Comics, do you think another publisher would buy them? And do you think this might be a good thing? I think it might be, because DC has been creatively bankrupt recently, with a few exceptions, of course. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This coming from Louisiana, who says, the weather here sucks even more than Texas. I don't know. I'll have to come and find out. Okay, so I think that I think DC is probably in a now that kind of this fishing exercise went on, I wouldn't be surprised if Discovery will look around for another group to manage the publishing arm. I think what's most likely is that the properties, meaning the license, the ownership, will stay where it's at. It'll stay with DC, Warner Media, Discovery. So Superman, Batman, etc. will be owned by those characters. I think what will happen is that, and I think recent weeks have led more and more to this. I think what's at least likely to happen is that the publishing arm starts to get outsourced. So it's like it's still owned, but just like companies come in and make toys, a comic company can come in and basically do the license, and they have to give some money. But the challenge with that, as I mentioned before, is that the price to do that has to be low. It cannot be this huge price, because if it was this huge price, the person buying it has to be extremely confident that they're going to triple their revenue on the books, because they now have to split the incoming cash with another entity. In this case, you've got whoever, let's say, for example, Boom Studios somehow got the rights to publish DC. It would be more cost effective for Boom to just publish their own material than to pay Discovery whatever the fee is. And in many cases, it would be at least half. In many, given the power of the licenses, and regardless of whatever you think about, Superman, Green Lantern, all these characters, those are well-recognized, powerful characters. So Discovery, and if you look at Zaslav, what he's done in the past, and kind of how licenses worked with Discovery, I think that Discovery rates, if you're going to try and license some of their content, was 75%, or it was 70 or 75% to Discovery, to that entity. I mean, look, the guy's got a package now of $250 million. I mean, he's a money guy. I think he's smart. He clearly knows profit, and he's gonna. If they license it off, they're gonna want premium dollars for those premium properties. The challenge is, again, if you're Boom, and let's say even if it's a deal of a 50-50 split, that means you publish your own thing. You maintain all the rights. You do not have the headache of whatever's going on. You don't have to adhere to any license. You don't get, if you make something really big and powerful and impressive, you could take it and make it a movie for millions of dollars rather than having to share it with somebody else. If you take the DC license, it means, at best case, you're going to have to sell double the DC comics just to make the same money you're making for your own stuff. And if any of these comics really hit, you're going to get a cut, maybe, depending on the deal, of whatever the movie rights are. If Warner suddenly decides to adapt this event that you're doing, you're lucky if you get a creator credit and maybe like a 5% on the back end. You're not going to get any kind of real money out of it. So, your investors, and Boom is a company that is actually trying to sell itself, but if your investors are going to tell you don't take that deal and get tied into all this stuff, unless it's a sweetheart deal, because there's no upside to it. The upside is just you're making comics, and unless you think the DC books that you're doing will sell, 3 to 4 to 5x, when somebody's looking at an investment, they're not even looking at double. Double is considered failure. You're looking for a 4 to 8x return on investment. So it's possible. I think it's likely that Discovery shops it. As I've said in another video, I don't think there's buyers in that market. So I don't know. Selling it outright, no. They're not. Discovery is definitely not going to want to give up on some of the bigger kind of worldwide properties. They're valuable to them, more valuable than most of what Discovery has in this Warner Media merger or acquisition. And on top of that, if they wholly own those licenses, it's good deals for them. They've got very limited creator payouts they need to do. So I think it's more likely they keep it financially. Maybe you find some licensor that gets good deals, something is struck, because I do agree, and many people are speculating, that publishing comics is a headache and not one that Discovery really wants to be in. And I think that's very, very true. But it's also cheap marketing for kind of these licenses to keep them alive. It doesn't cost them very much. It is a rounding error for the company. I mean, keep in mind one other thing here, and this is important when you think about Marvel and DC and all this other type stuff. I was on some live stream. I think I got in an argument with Ethan was on that live stream about this. You can call any of this whatever you want to call it, but the reality is there's not. I mean, the operating expenses for these companies, Marvel and DC, are low. They're extremely low. The operating expenses are covered. What was the stat I heard that the operating expenses of DC, the operating expenses, meaning how much it costs to kind of run that publishing business, were covered by what they made off of the license of the Halloween costumes that year. Meaning, if you go to Target and you get like the little cheap, shitty, like plastic mask, Superman, Batman, costumes. I think it was the year the Justice League came out, and they sold a decent amount of costumes to kids. And the money they made off that license, from what I was told, and I think you can actually back in look this up if you were willing to pour through a bunch of financial reports, was equivalent to the operating expenses of the company. Again, that may or may not be true, but that gives you a sense. It is in that ballpark. This isn't massive dollars that are being thrown out here. So if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, you don't go in there and be like, I'm really worried about how much this comic division is costing me. You don't do that. It's, here's a stat I actually know to be absolutely true. Okay. Many big companies have like Sedesco or these catering groups that manage the employee cafeteria and the lunch and the coffee. Like if you go to a Starbucks inside of a Microsoft or a Disney, that Starbucks is operated by Sedexo or one of these. There's a couple different companies that basically operate, the food and the catering and all that kind of stuff within large corporations. The amount Disney spends on the food and catering for their employees and kind of all these different pieces, which is a hefty amount. You're thinking about worldwide business, multiple parks, everything else, office buildings. The amount of money they spend on that is more than the amount of money they spend on Marvel Comics, the publishing division. That is absolutely true. So again, I mean, in times are tough and you want to cut costs, you're going to look to cut costs. But I will tell you, any CEO that comes out and says, the way I'm going to cut costs is I'm going to eliminate or sell off this division that cost me less than the food catering, that CEO is getting fired. I'm not now. Again, you look behind when times are tough. You look under every cushion and everything else. It doesn't mean this stuff is all safe. It just means it's going to be on nobody's radar to really get rid of this stuff, to take action to get rid of it. It's going to float along. Now, by the same hand, this isn't great news for comics because it also is not making enough for anybody to care about it, which is a bad thing. You do want people to actually care about the businesses you run, and if they don't, it tends to be underinvested. They tend to make bad decisions. They don't market it like they should, and it becomes this weird entity that nobody seems to really care about. That's not healthy either. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. That's thought. I hope that's some good food for thought. And thanks for listening.